Alrighty guys, so Toxic Rain, is it dead? Did the patch notes finally manage to kill Toxic Rain? TLDR? Not really. Not really, we're just going to build it a little bit different. It definitely hurt the top end, I'm not going to lie on that one, but essentially this is the only patch note that actually came out, and a lot of people probably overreacting or whatever you want to call this, but the long story short is that the only thing they did was basically get rid of a little bit of skill effect duration, which is fine. And then they pretty much tried to gut, what do you call this? The area of effect thing, maybe, right? So if you actually read this thing, it literally says that the spread range of pods from Toxic Rain is now affected by area of effect modifiers, right? So pretty much scaling lots of AoE may be detrimental. Now, unfortunately for us, this is a pretty vague statement to make. It doesn't actually give us an actual indication of exactly how much area of effect is going to spread the pods out. Like, you know, in terms of a relative ratio. But what it does say right here is the base spread range of the spore pods has also been slightly lowered. So that means back in the day, right, for 5 pods, you needed 50 AoE. I'm assuming they've condensed that down so that as you get more and more in AoE, you can actually fit in a few more pods. Now, I would pretty much predict that what they're actually getting at here is that the Helm enchant still currently exists in the game. So you have 5 by default, and that's pretty normal, right? But if you ever look at your Helm enchant, right, you do still have, where's the Toxic Rain? 1 additional arrow in the game. Now, they would not leave this in the game if they they plan to completely gut being able to get 1 additional arrow. So pretty much the thing I'm going to tell you right now is that at the very least, we are capable of getting 6 arrows, or else they would probably delete that enchant. They wouldn't probably leave that around if it wasn't enough AoE to get at least 6 arrows in. So all you're really going to need is a Carcass Jack, and then there's your 6 arrow, basically. That's the way I look at those patch notes is, okay, I mightn't be able to get 7, 8, 9, all that sort of stuff, right? But I'm assuming I can at the very least get 6, especially considering they lowered the base spread. So that means that I now have at least 5 by default, and I can probably fit 1 more in, else they would have probably gotten rid of the Helm enchant. That's the way I read this. So obviously AoE is off the table, right? Like, it's too sketchy to know what it is, but 6 arrows is probably a pretty good area. It's probably going to be the absolute worst case scenario. That's the way I look at that. Oh yeah, also like our slow got debuffed or whatever. It's not really a big deal. So, what are we going to do about that? Absolutely terrible, man. They took away some skill effect duration on a couple of clusters as well. That's all the changes, by the way. So, I want to remind people that essentially, we don't use those clusters at the start. So for League start itself in particular, right? Like, I want you to look at the regular tree here, right? No cluster jewels. That's no cluster jewels, okay? I just want you guys to be aware of that, right? So the only thing that got hit was the cluster jewel skill effect duration. These are completely untouched. See, that League starter you had before still works now. Absolutely nothing changed about them. In fact, if anything, they got better. Why is that? Well, now you no longer need the Pathfinder AoE to get your 5 pods working. So when there's no AoE and no skill effect duration clusters, the build remains perfectly untouched. If not, yet again, better than ever, because now that you don't need the Pathfinder's AoE here to get your 5 arrows to work, because they supposedly made them smaller, I would assume small enough for 5 to work, that means you can go another Ascendancy. And I actually managed to get more damage out of the Raider off the bat, okay, so not in the end game, but off the bat, than you can the Pathfinder. So I believe the original POB has about 4.7 mil. Well, you can actually get 6.4 on the Raider, because Raider is basically a glass cannon. So it's obviously got terrible life, right, but really good damage. What's that using? A Carcass Jack, Devoto's Devotion, a Quill Rain, Chaos and, crafted attack. Chaos, crafted attack, a +1, that's it. Some life on it, -9, which you don't need anymore. Regular life and res gear, it's the exact same POB from before, right? We make our res requirements, however you see fit. We do swap up the flask because we're no longer a flask finder, so we just get a Jade Flask, which synergizes well with Raider. So Raider has this thing over here, right, which says you get 35% more chance to evade melee. This literally caps us out on evade chance, I believe. So where's our evasion rating? 95% chance to evade. That's really good, because it's also going to go with our crazy dodge cap and dodge chance, because we are in fact using a Raider. So we are more glass cannon, and we lose flesh and stone. So flesh and stone can no longer be fit in the build, but we make that up in evasion rating and dodge rating now. So pretty much, we don't get flesh and stone. That's great. We'll go dodge and evasion. Actually works out to be really, really good. So I got more damage on the build. We're really, really fast. We're about 300 movement speed when everything's up and running. So we're not a flask finder, so we can't always piano our flask, but our flask aren't like really giving us a crazy amount of damage. It's pretty much just the Jade Flask giving us a bit of attack speed, and that's it. Not gonna, make or break the bank there. Freeze immune, just regular speed, curse immune, bleed immune. There you go. There's all the usual stuff there. Still the exact same starter items. Unbelievably cheap. Dark Ray Vectors. Your Carcass Jack. Obviously a 6-link one of these is hard to get, but not impossible. You could also 6-link your Quill Rain, same as always. Like all this gear, this is Aberrant Fossil spammed. You just buy a Hunter base with a life roll on it, preferably 1 res, and you can craft on attack speed. You know what I mean? This isn't like this is at best a 1x item. At best. This thing here, chaos damage and a crafted attack speed with a life roll on it and hopefully a res. That's not amazing. That's probably, yet again, at best, 1x. You know what I mean? This amulet, a +1 to chaos. You can Aberrant Fossil spam. These are all basically just Aberrant Fossil spammed Hunter bases, just for reference. You're just basically looking to get like 2 mods out of it and then craft the final one. Same thing with this. Life and res. Life and res. No damage mods here. That's it. That's all you need. And you can get this kind of damage off of a starter and at least a bunch of decent dodge and evasion chance as your defenses. And you're also extremely quick. So Deadeye technically has better single target at the start, but Raider is much faster. And considering mapping is the whole, start of the game and start of a league start, I'm going to pick Raider over Deadeye. Also because the extra 2 prods you get on Deadeye no longer scales into the late game because we don't know what AoE looks like. So the only thing I can't gamble on is AoE, therefore that makes Raider the best choice to start with. It's faster, it's squishier, but it's got better dodge layers, especially now that we've had to drop Flesh and Stone. So for me, Raider is the ultimate starter, and the best thing is, as soon as you want to swap over into the full-blown version, it's a matter of swapping up your tree. So I've already updated this for 3.4. I'll be releasing this hopefully after this video. So as far as league starting is concerned, right? As far as league starting is concerned, Toxic Rain is fine. The only nerf was to the AoE and to skill effect duration. Well, these didn't get nerfed, so your skill effect duration is the exact same as it was before. They didn't get touched. Not one bit. AoE is gone, right? But we don't use any AoE in the beginner version anyway. We literally use no AoE, which actually means that Raider probably gets that extra arrow. It probably has got a proper 5 arrows. So we go to configuration, 5 arrows. That's my damage on 5 arrows. No AoE even needed anymore, okay? So for me, Toxic Rain's in a really good spot, and we now have a much better leveling tree, which can transition into Pathfinder later. Blech. Okay, so, very important to read this too. Toxic Rain, 6 arrows. What did we change? Okay, well, pretty easy, right? It makes a lot of sense. If AoE is a mystery, right, we don't know what AoE is going to look like, but we know we can get at least 1 more arrow on the build, most likely, through the Carcass Jack. My bet would be, just don't invest in AoE. Get more damage, get more raw damage. So, I've said it before, I say it a million times, right? So this is 32? Wow, I thought this was meant to be 37. Oops, just got some PMs. Let me think about this. I thought I had 37 mil. That's fine. Okay, I'll work that out later. But I guess the TLDR here is we just have to swap up a few bits and pieces. Ooh, this. Okay, so yeah, rather than get a +1 up here, right? We're just going to get Toxic Rain deals 40% increased damage. Increased damage on Chaos skills is massive. Guess what we do with that Carcass Jack? Doesn't need to be +4 anymore. Just make it a 50% increased damage. You can corrupt this. That's nearly 100% increased damage you're capable of getting right there. And that is massive for Chaos. By the way, I just need to quickly make sure I've done this right. And that's in the weapon slot. It is. All right, sweet. Right, so basically what ends up happening here is when you actually make this swap, right, you're going to have 32 million damage. We swap out the, what do you call it? We swap out, we no longer need Hardened Scars, right? So we end up with a corruption, what do you call it? Oh god, I forgot the name. Anointment. Okay, so we actually drop Hardened Scars and we replace it with a Basalt. Now this is actually fine. Because think about this, right? Basalt gives you 15% physical damage reduction. 15% physical damage reduction. Now, Fortify would give you 20 from hits, right? 20% raw reduction. Add up all your flask effect, right? And we pretty much have 20% again. Probably have more, to be honest. So we've lost our Fortify layer, but that's okay, because now we've got Basalt to make up for it. And guess what, guys? Divine Flesh still works. So we're already mitigating a massive chunk of elemental and physical. Like, quite a bit. So it's, what is this? This is, should be 21% physical damage reduction. So that's from hits as well. Flat. Just off that flask alone, man. And then obviously elemental reduction on top. So we're actually relatively tanky, and there is another layer with what they call it, Veterans Awareness, which I would also urge people to look into. And if that's not enough, we still have our usual skill effect duration for, what's this thing called again? Immortal Call. So when this thing procs, we've also got another 27% less, 28% less physical. That's like 50% mitigation when these things are up, and they last a long time because we are still scaling skill effect duration. So you're probably like, okay, so we don't need Hardened Scars. We make our damage back up by going Corruption. AoE, like what's going to happen to the Cluster Jewels? Easy, swap them for Chaos damage. Raw Chaos damage. Look, skill effect duration right there. Skill effect duration right there. So we don't even miss out on skill effect duration. We actually still have the same amount. So back where we had, 20%, we've now got 15. And yet again, these are still here. There's no AoE scaling, right? So all as we do is start going for increased multipliers everywhere. Get Student of Decay, and then you can still use the Divine Flesh. Also, another good thing too, right? You no longer need an Enlighten level 4 on your auras because we just drop Flesh and Stone. So we've got a lot less life. Obviously, this is in the mid-tier version, but we maintain our damage just by swapping it up. And just for reference, this is 6 pods, no shenanigans. We get rid of it off the helm. We no longer need a +1 bow or anything like that, so Quill Rain is unfortunately taken out of the race. So even in the high-end versions, because we don't know about additional arrows right now until we actually test it, AoE and additional arrows are off the table, right? Which means de facto, the +3 bow or 30x bow is back in favor. These are very, very easy to craft, and they still exist in the game even now. You can make this in a league. So don't tell me this is like some buffed up POB, which means yet again, we only need 1 additional arrow. Just make it a prefix and suffix. Like pretty much how you do all your late game crafting is Awaken a Slamming. That's it. And then cleaning up the base and finishing with a multi-mod. See this thing here, right? There's 2 mods you want. You can Awaken a Slam that together, and if you get the movement speed, good on you, man. I bought this. I have this bow originally on standard. This is one of my original bows, right? And the movement speed is just flavor, really. So you can get this exact quiver just by Awaken a Slamming and isolating those mods, even if you had to clean them up with some annuls, you know what I mean? Also, you can still do imprinted Awaken a Slamming as a crafting method, if you guys know about that. I'll go into that later, but craftable. Slink Gloves. It's got Chaos and it's got Culling Strike. Obviously, the nerf to your damage at the beginning means that you're really going to like Culling Strike. Culling Strike actually ends up being really good. So Culling DPS is where the extra 2.7 mil comes from. This is going to help out a lot on bosses. I'm telling you right now, you will not struggle on anything besides bosses. Like, mapping is easy. Like most actual map bosses are easy. It's endgame mapping. Single target is what get hit. Nothing else, right? So, regular boots, life res, fill them in. +1 with extra chaos mod. You can aberrant fossil spam this. It took me, I think the average was like 70 to even 100. And obviously you can't tell me you can't get this, right? Like, this is very gettable. I have one of these on standard as well. What I originally had, just a despair and res ring with a damage roll. This is not amazing, but obviously this is what you want. And then just, yet again, a life and res roll with a damage mod on there. Regular leather belt with preferably with chaos damage. Not amazing in any stretch, and you can use catalyst to get more res out of it. So, this is all regular gear and very craftable, self-craftable. It's aberrant fossil spams, along with a couple of awakener crafts, which is kind of expensive, but for 32 mil damage, unbelievably doable. You could do this on your own if you had to, you know what I mean? Like, not out of the realm of possibility. Obviously then we upgrade to Awakener Gems, still a Mirage Archer. So, when people ask me, oh man, is Toxic Rain dead? Absolutely not. So, you got your beginner versions, your beginner gear. So yet again, I'm still going to recommend people League start as a Raider. So this is your Raider start gear, the same one from the other POB. So basically use that leveling tree with the early game gear on there, which should look similar to this, right? And that's going to end you, this one's got 8.2, ignore that, it's slightly higher because of the configurations are different. And then basically work your way into 1 cluster, work your way into 2 clusters. You'll have 13 mil on beginner gear, which is ridiculous. And that's as a Pathfinder, not even as a Raider. I think it's counting the overlap though. And then obviously, you know, start going for mid-tier gear. You now have all the changes you're going to need and what you need to get the damage back to where it was, if not ahead of where it was. I think we only had 30 mil before. Oh wait, now it's 37. Okay, so now it actually updated properly. I have no idea why it was 32 when we started. But anyway. So yeah, 2 clusters ends up... Oh wait, maybe a second. Maybe it was on... 1. Nope, okay. I have no idea why. So the long story short, guys, is Toxic Rain dead? Not even close. Just change up how you make the build. So we're still going to be a Pathfinder in the end because Infinite Flask is awesome. Divine Flesh is still a ridiculously good one. Veteran's Awareness is also worth looking at. I don't know if that's actually a timeless jewel yet. I will be looking into that soon, obviously. But rather than go your Tempered Arrow ones and Broadside, go to Misery Everlasting, go to Unholy Grace, go to Wicked Pal, because obviously skill effect duration. And we pretty much lose no skill effect duration. Like, rather than having 20 and like 1 really powerful node, we just go back down to 15 and some Despair Curse effect. You swap up your Ami, we drop Hardened Scars, and we replace it with a relatively strong Basalt Flask. We got like 50% mitigation when all this is up, along with a permanent Divine Flesh. It's obviously not got the highest life pool. You can fix that out with much better gearing. But yet again, crafting is off the table. But the long story short is, it's virtually the same as it was before. You just have to change up your gearing. There's no broken double corrupts in here or anything like that. This is 1 corruption. Grab a bunch of Carcass Jacks, corrupt them, you will eventually hit 50% damage. It's not that hard. You know what I mean? This is also just all average rolled stuff. So, yeah. TLDR, guys, Toxic Rain is not dead. It's as good as it ever was. It's only the top end, which is guys like me on Standard with bonkers gear, Berserk, and all that sort of stuff going. You know, 400% movement speed, all map mods, all that crazy shit, that's dead. Nothing else. Alright, guys, if you like that, like, subscribe, all that jazz. Peace out. I'll catch you guys later. I've got more POBs to do. I'll be uploading this right after. Thanks for watching. Catch you later.